Right, xenophobic attacks in South Africa have become all too familiar, often attributed to a fight for resources. The ugliness of hatred towards each other is something that can't be erased. South African photojournalists James Oatway and Alon Skuy have documented xenophobic violence in various communities through their lenses in their book called Brother. In doing so, they hope to lay bare the face of hatred, intolerance and inaction. They join me now live virtually, and I've got the book here with me. I must say, Alon and you, James, I really didn't expect to feel the way that I felt when I looked at this book. Honestly, as a South African, I was very embarrassed.
Thanks for having us on your show. So basically, the book came about after an exhibition that was held in 2018 to commemorate 10 years since the first major outbreaks that occurred in 2008. And myself and James were quite young journalists at the time, photojournalists, and we were shocked at the level of brutality and violence that broke out in various areas around Johannesburg. And the exhibition was created in order to create awareness around these attacks. And from that exhibition, this book came about, where we thought we needed to contain these images along with critical texts as a matter of historical record.
James, I want to come to you. I mean, the foreword is by Justice Edwin Cameron, a very important man in the face of justice in South Africa, right? And in the beginning, he says whose stories are told and whose are obscured, who is allowed to be visible and who is erased. And he's describing here photography and the importance of your job in documenting our lives.
Yeah, so that is the power of photojournalism, is that it can take issues that people might not understand or might not really get to experience themselves, and it puts human faces on these issues. So in some ways, in essence, it can humanize problems and issues that people don't understand, and that's what we've tried to do with the pictures in our book. It gives the viewer a time to really interrogate what is going on, to look at the photos of both victims of xenophobic violence as well as the people who carry out this violence, and they look like everyone else. Everyone can see a little bit of themselves there, and it situates the viewer in those locations. So it takes a moment of time, and it immortalizes that moment, and allows the viewer to experience what we experience, really.
I mean, Alon, I looked at this book and I thought, oh, wow, a book on xenophobic attacks with just pictures. I didn't realize that you and James had so many pictures. I can imagine 2008 was, one of those periods that took really long for the xenophobic attacks to finally stop. But I never imagined that we would have a book this thick, and I just want to show the viewers, a book this thick that shows in our faces as South Africans the embarrassment from just 2 photojournalists. Imagine how many photos are still out there. Yeah,
so 2008, there was over 100,000 displaced and over 60 killed, and that's when those attacks started. But there have been attacks intermittently over the years. 2015 was a major outbreak. And then again, 2019. And as well, people are dealing with isolated attacks and kind of rhetoric on a daily basis as well in various areas. And yeah, it's quite shocking, the scale of the amount of people affected, both cross-border migrants and South Africans. I mean, people also suffer a lot of kind of post-traumatic stress disorder from witnessing these attacks. Whole communities are uprooted, and it's just an indictment that more awareness needs to be created about these attacks and how do we put an end to them. I suppose this book is kind of a call to action and just a record of what is going on.
I want to come back to James. I mean, a lot of people would know James Oatway, and I'm specifically looking for this picture. A lot of people would know you from the Emmanuel Sithole story and the pictures that you took of that attack. I think what was most scary for me, and the viewers will forgive me, I am looking for the picture specifically, was one of the men who were found guilty of killing Sithole, and how he had the knife. I think you even describe it in the extract next to the picture, how he just had the knife above his head before stabbing Emmanuel. I want to talk to you about that picture. I'm sure you've been interviewed about it many times, and a lot of people who are attacking you as a photojournalist about, is it about the picture or is it about helping the person that's being attacked? And you had to explain to people how you did try to help this man and save his life.
Yeah, it was a terrible day. At the time I was working at the Sunday Times, and myself and a colleague, Beauregard Tromp, a writer, we had been following the story for the whole week. Most of the violence had been taking place in the city centre, and then during the night, it was a Friday night, we got calls that that the violence had spread to Alex, and we went out there early Saturday morning, obviously not knowing what to expect, and found burning barricades and shops that had been looted and so on. And I was taking photos of one of these looted shops when I just heard this commotion, and this is when I saw these men attacking Sithole. And it was quite shocking. The pictures were used the next day on the front page of the Sunday Times, and it created a massive outrage. The army was deployed into Alex the next day. And there were protests organized around South Africa and other African countries. So it did become a defining moment in the 2015 xenophobic attacks. Unfortunately, we're still seeing more attacks happening to this day. So how many times do we have to witness these same events taking place? It's very upsetting.
I mean, I look at this picture, and you describe even in your extract, and I hope the viewers can see it. This is still Emmanuel Sithole that James Oatway took a picture of, and there's a picture there on page 68 where you even describe that he kept looking back at his attackers as if he was scared that they'd be coming back. But every time you told him to stand up, he couldn't. He looked surprised the whole time. I'm assuming because at the time you didn't realize that he had a wound to his heart.
Yeah, that's true. I obviously saw him being attacked, and I knew that he'd sustained some wounds, but I didn't know how severe the wounds were. And he actually did get up and he walked away. And it was only, some time later, someone had shouted to me and said, "That man has fallen down." And that's when myself and my colleague, we went and found him kind of laying in the gutter, clutching his chest. And that's when we, managed to get him in the car and then take him to hospital. But unfortunately, they weren't able to save him. So it was very tragic.
Alon, there's a picture here as well that I saw of the Sambo brothers. We've read about the Sambo brothers. One of them stabbed, very badly on the night that, they were being attacked at the hostels they were living in. And, this was particularly sad for me because besides that being xenophobic and black-on-black violence, one of the brothers was explaining, I believe, to the journalist that actually they're from Limpopo. And, the scary part was being attacked by people you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's as well, people live side by side together in normal times when things are at peace, and then shop from each other's shops. And then as soon as the violence breaks out, your neighbor becomes an enemy and a target. And South Africans, as I said before, are also very affected by these attitudes, and sometimes it's indiscriminate, and people get an idea in their head there's kind of a mob kind of movement, and people are killed when they are just innocently standing by.
Alon, they say pictures actually speak more words than words themselves, right? And I'm looking at a certain picture, and I hope the viewers will be able to look at it with me. It is a dead body covered, of course, but this picture actually spoke a lot to me, because you're seeing a crowd around the body. It's blurred because of the lens or the settings that you did, but you focused a lot on the mother who has a baby on her back, passing this dead body from the previous night as you wait for police and ambulance. And I'm still going to speak about the waiting period for police and ambulances to arrive a bit later on. But this picture speaks a lot about, just this woman walking with this baby who is on her back, clearly a toddler, and this child is witnessing this, and this child is going to see this, these kind of attacks as normal.
Yeah, and that was a very sad, tragic and poignant scene where it was the mundane daily life going on. This woman who was on her way to collect water with the baby on the back, and then actually being witness to violence that happened overnight. And communities often are confronted by these scenes the next morning. And it's very sad. What happens in these communities.
There's somebody, James, that you speak of in the book. I don't remember his name clearly, really, that is mentioned in the book. I think they wrote this, or you interviewed them or something. They were talking about how their parents are from Mozambique, but they were born here in South Africa, lost both his parents in the same year, I think 2004, and his parents had left him land here in South Africa. That person is South African and was attacked by people he knew.
Yeah, and I mean, this is what we see one must understand that the borders of Africa were drawn up by, white men in Europe, many, many years ago. And often those borders separated villages and families. And they're actually quite trivial if you think about it. And that's why one has to it's actually, the issue is very simple. It's wrong to use violence to try to address certain issues. That's wrong, right? So South Africans have the right to be angry because they are suffering with unemployment and certain other service delivery issues. Unfortunately, that anger must be directed at the right people, and it's easier to, attack people and direct your anger at people weaker than you. And this is the problem, really, that the South Africans' anger is misguided. It should be aimed towards the government, because once the foreigners are gone, there's still going to be unemployment. There's still going to be drugs in the communities. And that will happen if the foreigners are gone. And then who's next? Is it people that speak a different language? Is it people from a different tribe? We must stop trying to blame those who are innocent and actually hold the people responsible to account. And in this case, it's the government.
I'm just showing the viewers, I hope they can see, one of the photos is of a distressed shop owner, I think Somalian. The police officer is there, but he's looking at his store. It's basically just ransacked, and I'm assuming he had to watch this happen and decide on his life or, putting food on the table. And as usual, again, it's people that because these are the communities that the Somalians have told us when we cover these stories, that these are the people that I even give a tab to and support them when they don't have money to be able to buy bread. And I give them the bread and say they can pay me at the end of the month. These are the same people, or their children, who come in to attack them. But I'm looking at the police officer specifically, and there's a lot of mention in the book, even the other picture that's on the opposite, I don't know if the team can show the viewers, of police arresting somebody finally. In South Africa, there's a lot of complaining about police and how they treat these kinds of cases. Not only these ones, but our police officers here seem really not to be trained enough to be able to sort something like this out. For instance, police being accused of coming the next day when people are calling to say somebody is being killed, or calling to say my shop is being looted. Police arriving probably the next day when somebody's already dead, or not doing anything as somebody's being necklaced and burnt.
Yeah, so I mean, it varies from situation to situation. I've been at outbreaks of violence where police have been on the scene and they have managed to protect migrants from angry crowds. But the way the nature of the violence, how it unfolds, it often unfolds very quickly and in different locations at the same time. So it's not always possible for police to be in every single environment. But I guess it's the same with all sorts of criminal activity. Sometimes the police are there at the right time, and sometimes they do take a long time. I think the issues are trying to prevent the things from happening altogether. Because, for example, I just received a flyer on my phone, announcing that there will be xenophobic violence taking place this coming week. So if I've got that information, then surely the police should be able to have that information, find out who put that flyer out there, and make sure that there are police available to stop this from happening.
Alon, I'm going to end with you. I mean, this is something that I could speak to you guys about for longer. Unfortunately, we have a short time. I'm looking at this picture, and I'm showing the viewers as well. It's on page 50. It's of a crowd, I think, in the hostel. I think this was in Johannesburg. I think this was the latest one, Jeppystown, if I'm not mistaken. And you look at that crowd that's got the nopgiris, golf clubs, etc. And you look in front, there's young people. Very young people, yet again, being shown that this is the way that you sort out problems with violence.
Yeah, in 2019, the hostels were a hotbed of the rhetoric that was going on. And after the picture of Emmanuel Sithole that was published, there were a number of raids that took place there. And I suppose, people from all ages kind of took part in these marches, and it is sad that people aren't being educated against the evils of hatred, and that people are learning this behavior, and it needs to stop as soon as possible.
All right, James Oatway and Alon Skuy, thank you very much for this offering. For me, it really is something, South Africans, if you're watching this show today, this is the mirror that you're going to have to look at in these pictures to see exactly how we are as South Africans when it comes to other Africans, the violence that we have on each other, and some people being killed just because they don't speak a certain language, but they are still from this country. People killing each other. It really is a reflection of what we are as a country and what government doesn't do.